You're about to enter the Atomic Voodoo Lounge, New Stanton's one and only surreal dive bar, bringing you beauty and magic and terahertz tragic. I'm Maxwell Vagus, writer, poet, musician, and author of the soon-to-be-published novel New Stanton. Descend with me into the static buzz of late-night radio, where words and music swirl through neon dreams and drift like cigarette smoke out over dried-up prehistoric seas. Welcome back to the Atomic Voodoo Lounge. Or maybe you've just been reverberating between points A and B since our last episode. I'm Maxwell Vagus, and this evening we have some special treats for you, loyal patrons. In addition to the regular menu items like our cocktail of the evening, 6-word noirs, and featured story, we will have a special guest dropping by. One, Mr. ROB HART, USA Today bestselling author whose novel The Medusa Protocol just hit the shelves a month or so back to rave reviews. Furthermore, tonight's featured songs are brought to you by House of Tabu and Tabu Recordings. Please visit houseoftabu.com and remember Tabu is spelled T-A-B-U. Also, check out their publications Exotica Modern and Reverb International, along with their custom zombie and Mai Tai glasses, which are a great addition to any bar, bar cart, or kitchen table. Ken Holazinski runs House of Tabu and is not just a trendsetter, but a fine gentleman to boot. Tonight's spotlighted tracks come from Kitten and the Tonics and Test Subject 17, both available on Tabu Recordings. Among many of the burning questions here at the Atomic Voodoo Lounge, there's one that comes up quite often. You got a good sarsaparilla? Unfortunately, no. We don't even have a bad one. In fact, we don't even have Sioux City sarsaparilla. But we have the next best thing, the White Cuban cocktail. The White Cuban is the Atomic Voodoo Lounge's twist on the classic The White Russian, the dude's signature drink from the 1998 film The Big Lebowski. You're going to need 2 ounces of your favorite rum. We obviously suggest Chum Bucket rum. An ounce of coffee liqueur, such as Kahlua, and an ounce of heavy cream or half and half. Now, if you want to be fancy, you do it this way. Take an old-fashioned or rocks glass and fill it with ice. Pour in the rum and the coffee liqueur. Gently pour the heavy cream over the back of a spoon onto the top of the drink to create a layered effect. Serve with a cocktail straw so that the drinker then has the opportunity to stir it to their desired consistency. So when you're in the mood for something creamy and dreamy and classic, try a White Cuban and disappear into the Milky Way. To get the evening rolling, here's Operation X5000 by Test Subject 17.
without knowledge.
Wow, what a ride. That's like tearing down that highway that splits New Stanton right in half. That was Operation X5000 by Test Subject 17. It comes off of their 2023 release, I Am Test Subject 17. Now, what's the fun of being at the Atomic Voodoo Lounge without a little bit of barroom philosophy? If you think about it, writing and reading are really different sides of the same coin, so to speak. You might think of them as being point A and point B. The writer puts the words out there and the reader, listener, receives them. So there's an element of motion to it all, the idea that words and meanings travel from writer to reader. The writer creates and the reader receives. But I'm not sure that's quite correct. To me, it seems that both the writer and the reader are creators and also receivers. Like a pebble dropped into still water, the ripples move out in concentric circles and then are reflected back and then reflected back again until there is no beginning or end to the whole process. It's just a cosmic buzz. Of course, if you are a proponent of Zeno's dichotomy paradox, which I am, in fact, my novel New Stanton hinges on this paradox, which argues that all motion is an illusion because to travel any distance, one must first cover half of it. However, before one can cover half, one must cover a quarter of the total distance. And before that, an eighth, and so on infinitely. And since one must complete an infinite number of smaller and smaller tasks, the paradox suggests you can never even start your journey. So where does that leave us as writers and readers if motion is an illusion? Well, to go back to my pond metaphor, if the reverberations or the concentric circles are moving outward and back until there's nothing but reverberation, then in a way there is no motion. But we exist, both writer and reader, in a realm of beauty and magic. Tonight, we have the distinct pleasure, honor, and privilege of speaking with somebody who knows quite a bit about writing and beauty and magic and fight scenes. The one and only Mr. ROB HART. Rob's novels, including the breakout novel The Warehouse, the time-bending mystery The Paradox Hotel, and the USA Today best-selling Assassins Anonymous, are known for page-turning plots mixed with relevant social commentary on such things as capitalism, high-tech, and morality. Rob crafts high-concept genre-blending thrillers, often with speculative and sci-fi elements. He has a background in journalism, political communications, and publishing, and most recently, Rob jumped into the higher education ring as a professor at Seton Hill University's Writing Popular Fiction MFA program. Hart's The Medusa Protocol was published in the summer of 2025 as part of his Assassins Anonymous series to glowing reviews. Ray Palin at bookreporter.com says the Medusa Protocol contains stories that are worth telling and savoring. And publisherweekly.com says Hart triumphs with this deliriously enjoyable sequel to Assassins Anonymous. So without further ado, the Atomic Voodoo Lounge Podcast's first ever guest, Mr. Rob Hart. Rob, thanks for being here. First off, since this is a lounge, what's your favorite drink to order when you're out on the town or simply relaxing at home?
Oh, man. I mean, I'll never say no to an old-fashioned, but, most of the time I'm just drinking straight whiskey, and I prefer rye.
What were your thoughts on that Writer's Tears whiskey?
It's good. It's good. You know, the name just feels a little cute.
Well, that's why I picked it up.
No, it's a solid drink.
I prefer bourbon over Irish whiskey.
Yeah. And look, like, I'm Irish. I love a good Irish whiskey, but yeah, there's something about a good bourbon that just really does it for me.
Now, let me ask you, since we are in the heat or midst of summer, what's your ideal summer day look like?
Oh, man. I mean, ideally, I would have a day where I didn't have to do anything, which is, exceedingly rare. I mean, I love hanging out with my daughter. If we can go to like a water park or go see a movie or something, that's just fun. I also am a big fan of hanging out at my friend's bar in the West Village and just sitting out front and drinking and hanging out with him. And he's like the dog mayor of the neighborhood because he gives all the dogs treats. So you just sit there and a parade of dogs just comes by to hang out with you. And it is a good way to spend a day.
Well, speaking of the summer, how was it having Assassins Anonymous be chosen for Barnes & Noble's mystery thriller pick for the month of June? I mean, how exactly does that happen? Did you have input into it? Did they contact you first? Was it just like lightning out of the blue?
Oh, it's totally like lightning. And look, this is the thing about publishing that is so frustrating, is the things that really move the needle, that can really change your stars, you have no control over. None whatsoever. It's just, you got to kind of hope that things come together. And that is just, I've been doing this for a long time. I've written a whole lot of books. That is, the right person read it, showed it to the other right person, and they all agreed, okay, let's do this thing. And there was an element of timing involved where the sequel was coming out at the end of June. And they sometimes like to do things like that where they kind of group things together.
Yeah, it seemed
I couldn't, everyone wants that.
Yeah.
That's what, everyone wants that deal because we sold 30,000 books in the course of a month, which is insane.
Congratulations. Yeah.
But yeah, you can't plan for it. You can't account for it. It's if you want to sell books, you got to get picked by Oprah or Reese Witherspoon, or you have to have something like this happen or get into a book club or, any number of these things that, again, you just cannot control.
Well, I'm sure that directly influenced the Medusa Protocol, which came out right after that.
I mean, it seems like it. The book is selling pretty well so far, and Barnes & Noble is still, I think they probably ordered more copies than they would have initially. Because, everyone's putting in an order for, the airport system orders how many, and Target orders how many, and Walmart orders how many, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So, I figure Barnes & Noble's order is probably a little bit bigger, which is great. But other than that, I'm trying not to look at it too closely because I want to maintain some level of serenity this summer.
Right. Well, since I deal with memory and identity and the convoluted paths that create us, can you recall the moment the ambition to write first took hold of your young brain?
Oh, man. Weirdly enough, I kind of can. I feel like I was reading Survivor by Chuck Palahniuk. I was in college, so I was probably 18, 17. And I was sitting in my bed in my dorm and I was reading this book and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know books could do this. This is dope. Maybe I should do this.
Yeah.
And it feels like that was the whole, like that was kind of the decision point. I was initially in college as an art major. I was doing graphic design and fine art and stuff. And then it turned out that was not for me. You know, it's like sometimes you get there and you realize like, oh, you know, this was fun until someone was telling me what to do and now it's not fun anymore. So I switched over to journalism, thinking at least like I can make a couple of bucks versus like a creative writing, you know, bachelor's degree. But yeah, it was so around when I was like 18 or so.
It's crazy. Like pacing, luck, experience, planning, all seem to play key yet inscrutable roles in a writer's life. Are you where you want to be right now as a writer? Do you feel like you're trying to catch up or branch out?
I don't think anyone is ever feels like they're where they need to be, because there's always, you know, first off, there's always an opportunity to learn and grow, but there's also always an opportunity to kind of, you know, there are things that I want that I haven't gotten yet.
Right.
You know, and I want to get those things. So I'm going to, but then I'm going to get those things and I'm going to decide on something else that I want. Like it's a very sort of, it's a weird industry in the sense that there's no final boss. There's no moment when it's like, I won, you know, I'm finished now.
Right.
It's just, you know, the top of every mountain is the bottom of another. So, you know, I'm happy. I'm deliriously happy to say that I'm a full-time writer. So, you know, I'm not sitting in an office right now wearing a suit, making some asshole rich. So I get to spend more time with my daughter. I get to, you know, spend time going to the gym and sleeping in if I feel like it. And, you know, I'm published and I'm vertical. You know, those are the two things that really matter. So, you know, I'm pretty happy. But yeah, of course, you know, there's always more stuff that I want to try for.
Now, you've often said that younger writers, newer writers should start with smaller presses rather than jump into the major leagues.
It's not bad getting picked up by a big publisher on your initial book, but I think that the stakes are a little bit lower with a smaller press, you know?
Yeah.
Because the thing is like, you know, it's a tough game. It's a tough game because when art meets capitalism, things start going sideways, you know, and if you don't, you know,
sure,
you might get paid a certain amount. If you don't earn back that much, you know, it's going to follow you. If you're with a smaller press because you've got a smaller hill to climb, you know, you can make a bit of a name for yourself, build yourself a reputation with reviewers, with readers, and just kind of learn how the process works, like what it's like to work with an editor, what publishing timelines look like, because these are all things that, you know, aren't really intuitive and frankly half the time make no sense. So it's really good to start kind of cutting your teeth on that a little bit so you can just kind of have an idea of what it's going to be like.
Now, you've got a lot going on genre-wise across your work. Speculative, sci-fi, thriller, noir, social commentary. What is it about those elements that attracts you? And was that the plan all along, or did you simply start with a story or premise and then let the genre elements come later?
I mean, you know, it's interesting. That's a big question because on one hand, like, I just want to write whatever weird thing I want to write, like whatever is most interesting to me in the moment. So I don't I don't think about genre labels. Like, I really don't care about them. They're for the people who work at like Barnes and Noble, and they're for like the people who work in publicity and marketing, so they can figure out which magazines to send you to for reviews.
Right.
I don't sweat that kind of stuff. I mean, there is kind of like a through line in that in my books, you know, the wealthy and the elite and the billionaires are always going to be the bad guys because that's just how I kind of view the world. But yeah, you know, it's just I'm generally attracted to whatever is most interesting to me in that moment. You know, I'm working on a sci-fi speculative series right now that I'm co-writing with somebody, but then I'm also working on a YA fantasy book for my daughter, which is first time I'm doing YA and that's the first time I'm doing fantasy. And it's a little scary because it's like these are not things that are super familiar to me, but it's also really, really fun.
Now, The Warehouse takes on some big issues: consumerism, capitalism, and the effects of consumerism and capitalism on society, but also on the workers within that society. Where did the germ seed of that story come from?
I can tell you exactly what the seed was. It was I had read a story in Mother Jones called I Was a Warehouse Wage Slave. And it was about a reporter who goes and gets a job at one of these fulfillment centers just to kind of like see what the deal is and how miserable of an experience it is, where it's like they're really treating you like chattel. It's like, you know, you call out sick, you're fired, because they've got a game plan. They set up these fulfillment centers in economically depressed areas. So it's like, you know, they can fire you for anything because there's 30 people lined up around the block waiting to fill your slot. And, you know, I read that back in 2012 and I was like, oh man, there is a book here. There's absolutely a book here. And it was very much coming from a place of like feeling like late stage capitalism is starting to metastasize in a really, really dangerous way. And it took me a while to crack it. I mean, I didn't really start writing the book in earnest until 2016. And then it came out in 2019. So yeah, it was, you know, I wasn't a good enough writer to start writing it when I first got the idea. I kind of had to like sit on the back burner and percolate for a little while.
Sure.
But yeah, no, it's, man, that was a fun book to write.
Now, when you say you weren't a good enough writer at that point, what do you mean by that?
You know, it was a big, complicated book because it was a thriller, but it was also meant to be, you know, kind of satirical, but kind of a polemic, but kind of, you know, it's just dealing with a lot of really heavy issues. And the thing is writing a thriller is, you know, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's a lot easier than writing a thriller that also has to be about social and economic issues, because then you're trying to thread that line between, like, you're trying to make like weird capitalism stuff like interesting for a reader while maintaining momentum, while maintaining interest. And so it's a hard balance. Plus, I was dealing with multiple POVs, which I had never written before. So I'm trying to balance like a big world building, you know. I'm basically like, for that book, I had to create a city out of scratch, which was also a bit of a challenge. So I just kind of focused on the books I was writing at the time, which were these kind of like punk rock noir books, because they were simple. It was one character, it was one POV, it was first person present. You know, and it was a little bit closer to my voice. So there was a bit of ease there in terms of putting it together.
Yeah. Now, in your writing process, you're a big fan of outlining. Not everybody is. Can you give us one tip or a piece of advice about outlining that you find useful?
Something I will sometimes do with outlining is that I will scratch out, like, really briefly what I think the course of the story should be, kind of like a bullet list of this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and then I'll delete it. I'll get rid of it. Yeah. Because especially in the beginning, you know, you're still trying to work this stuff out in your head. And I think you kind of need space to let it sort of sit. You know, but that's the thing. You know, it's funny. People tell me, you know, oh, I don't want to outline because then I lose like the element of surprise in my story, and it's sort of like, you know, why would I want to write it if I know where it's going? And I always find that, like, no matter how much I outline, I still along the way find stuff that I didn't really expect. And yeah, those moments are amazing.
Rob, you're of a particular age where you've got one foot in an almost pre-digital age and the other in a world where the warehouse, for instance, could actually exist, if it doesn't already. Do you think your writing has been influenced more by reading or consuming other media like movies, TV?
I think it's a little half and half, right? So I was always a big reader. I'm still a big reader. And in terms of like craft and voice and stuff like that, like, yeah, books are hugely important. In terms of my ability to kind of reach a reader and appeal to a reader, I think other forms of media are really useful. You know, I've done pretty well with the Assassin's Anonymous book so far. And Assassin's Anonymous is, you know, what if John Wick got into a recovery program for killers, which is probably the best elevator pitch that I'm ever going to come up with. But the thing is like, you know, people automatically get that. They know exactly what kind of book they're getting when I say that. Right. And so having that kind of like, you know, movie reference ability, I think is really helpful. Plus, I like to write action, and I think I'm decently good at it. And I think a lot of that comes from like growing up on a lot of kung fu movies, a lot of Asian cinema. Because Asian cinema handles action very differently than American cinema, where you've got like, you look at Matt Damon in The Bourne Identity, where they're using like smash cuts and shaky cam, and like you can't really see what's going on because he's not a trained martial artist, versus when you're watching like something Jackie Chan did,
True.
20 years ago.
Yes.
And, he is, and that's why the camera's back wide and they're single long tracking shots, because he can actually pull those things off. So just, from that perspective, the ability to kind of like understand how to convey action in a clear and concise way that's also going to be exciting to a reader, it all like, everything that you consume is sort of like is feeding into that.
Now, through the grapevine, I've heard that you've trained in some martial arts, and what I'm wondering is, has that training influenced your writing practice in any way, in addition to giving you content to fill books with?
I mean, right off the bat, I love that there's a grapevine about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I trained in Krav Maga for years, and then currently I'm doing Muay Thai. And yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of overlap there, because it teaches you a lot of really useful stuff. First off, like really basic things about like geography, like what a fight actually looks like and feels like. Not to say that I'm out getting in street fights or crazy action sequences,
sure.
But I'll tell you what, man, the hardest part of sparring is like just training out that freeze moment that happens when you get punched in the face. Like first time I got punched in the face in a sparring environment, my brain just went blank. And it's like you realize how hard it is and how unpredictable and scary it can be. So, the level of reality it brings there, and also just what the human body can handle. There's a reason that boxing rounds are only 3 minutes. Like
sure. Fighting
is really, really hard. So it's, it all comes together, and I absolutely love doing it. I'm getting older, and it helps me not feel so old.
Right.
But from a writing perspective, yeah, it is fantastic.
Now, back to Assassins Anonymous. You have that killer elevator pitch. What if John Wick entered a recovery program for killers, which is just totally fantastic. So in Assassins Anonymous, you wrote an action thriller where the hero's main goal is not to kill his opponents. Can you tell us a little bit about how you adapted that premise to Assassins Anonymous's sequel, The Medusa Protocol? I mean, is it operating in the same way, or did you change perspectives a bit?
Well, so for the sequel, I kind of moved the lens a little bit to a different character and made it more about her and her history and how she got to where she is. And, Mark from the first book is still there, but, he's sort of achieved enough of development in his own story that it was time to kind of like start from the studs with somebody else. And that was, it's interesting because initially you think about it and you're like, they can't all have the same reason for doing this. They all have to have their own histories and their own traumas and their own pasts and all that fun stuff. So, bringing in a different character was really, really helpful. For the third book, which I just finished, it was kind of, again, it's just looking for new ways to kind of like challenge the characters and put them into situations where they have to make difficult decisions.
Okay, for tonight's burning question, why get involved with teaching at an MFA program?
I really love teaching. It's really fun because what we do is super lonely and sometimes it sucks, and it's nice to be around other writers. I enjoy working with writers who are starting out because for me, it kind of feels like sending the elevator back down. Like I've done pretty well so far, and it's nice to be able to go to someone and say, hey, here's what worked for me and here's what didn't.
Sure.
And here's how to navigate this like stupid, frustrating, terrible, like heartbreaking industry. But then there's also, it makes me a better writer because there are so many things that I do that I kind of just do intuitively because that's just the way that I do it. But when I have to stop and I have to think about why I do it, and then I have to explain it to someone else.
Sure.
it puts it into a different perspective. And then I'm like, oh, now I kind of understand this a little bit better. And I'm glad that I have that understanding. So, yeah. It's I was really happy that Seton Hill took me because the dirty little secret here is that I don't have an MFA myself.
Right.
And most MFA programs will not take you if you don't have one. But because this is a writing popular fiction program, they were open to it just from my resume. So It was like, awesome, cool.
Yeah. So that's your first teaching experience, or have you done other things?
I've done online stuff. I work with Writer's Digest. I do stuff with them. I've done classes previously for various different organizations and websites. This is my first sort of like major, like college-y experience type thing.
Well, Rob, I really want to thank you for coming on the show and being the first ever guest on the Atomic Voodoo Lounge Podcast. Any closing thoughts? What's next for you? Anything you want us to check out, pay attention to, put on our calendars?
I would say two things. First is I've got a novel called Detour that's coming out in January. That's I co-wrote that with Jeff Rake, who is the showrunner and creator of the TV show Manifest, and that is super fun. And that's big, weird sci-fi mystery box novel that was a ton of fun to work on. So that's the next thing I've got coming out. The only other thing I would say is also, if anyone is listening and is interested, go see the movie She Rides Shotgun, which just came out. It was based, my buddy Jordan wrote the novel that it was based on, and the movie is dope. And I'm just very, very excited for him. It was really, really cool to like literally sit in the movie theater and be like, holy shit, my friend wrote this book. But yeah, absolutely worth seeing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Rob Hart. I will be sure to post any relevant links leading to Mr. Hart and his works in the notes section of my Substack website. Check it out at atomicvoodoolounge.com. The next segment here on the Atomic Voodoo Lounge podcast is what we call 6-word noir or 6-word speculative noir stories. It's our attempt to convey a feeling, a mood, an image, an action, basically a little story in 6 words. Now, last episode I put out a Maxwell Vagus challenge for subscribers to submit their own 6-word stories. And, well, we got a response. This one comes from Clinton Martin Sr., one of the first and biggest fans of the show. And as I read it over, I was reminded of Harold Dean, the main character of my upcoming novel, Newsstand. Alcoholic minds fail to find themselves. I guess when I say that 6-word story reminded me of Harold Dean, it reminded me of Harold Dean's starting point. Perhaps not the whole story. Now, the next 3 6-word attempts are by me, Maxwell Vagus. And I took inspiration from tonight's featured story. Phosphorescent crucifix. Another bedroom shadow monster. Whispering voices. Dark figures pulling me away. There is a sadness in a lullaby. Think you can do better? Well, maybe you can. That's why I'm sending out the Maxwell Vagus Challenge to all my Substack subscribers. Send in your best 6-word noir or 6-word speculative or, best of all, 6-word speculative noir for a chance to hear me read it on an upcoming episode of the Atomic Voodoo Lounge Podcast. About this time of the evening, I'm always in the mood for a little something secret. Well, how about a little Secret Tiki by Kitten and the Tonics? Kitten and the Tonics, Secret Tiki. That's off their 2023 album Painkiller. Kind of makes you want to drift off, float on those dark, dark seas, and perhaps disappear. But before you disappear, we have one more feature tonight, and that is a story that I wrote called Lullaby. Seems somewhat fitting, doesn't it? Lullaby by Maxwell Vagus. Mother left me alone to the darkness, her pale face bending over me, the kiss touching my forehead, the blue housecoat tassels swinging at her waist as she turned to leave. Only images remained, fading comforts. Shutting my eyes only brought more fears, but Mother allowed me 2 guardians. The buzzing tin can crackle of an alarm clock radio and the muted light of my bedside lamp. Where the radio was modern with neon red digits, the lamp seemed ancient. It had always been there, the placid scene at its base preserved in a halo of incandescent light. The miniature figure of a boy wearing an eggshell blue cap sat atop a fence. A flute to his mouth, he played in silence as the even smaller figures of a dog and a bird listened. The light and sound made me feel a bit safer, and I pulled the blanket up and around my head with only a hole for my face. To distract myself from the edges of vision and the blackness of my eyelids, I tried to imagine the boy sitting atop that fence, playing the music tinkling from the radio. A guardian angel keeping the night at bay, casting a dome of light and sound, protecting me from unfriendly faces peeking in my window or around the door jamb from the hallway. And then the shadows multiplied on my walls, the rough plaster whirls casting a monstrous puppet show of odd shapes, too odd to be random, half smiles, horned profiles, dinosaur scales, fingernails, pitchforks, messages I was meant to decipher if I could only bear to look at them for more than an instant. And the whispers, under the static hum of WHDS, I could hear voices not on the radio. A stream of fine-spun and unintelligible conversations rose up behind the walls and under the rugs, a river of whispers I dared not try to hear. Mom, did you say something? No one said a word. Go to sleep now. Her voice wasn't friendly. There was a separation there, an anger, a scolding. My circle of protection then grew smaller, and the night bigger, and tomorrow farther away. Was that a tap at my window? A nail tip scratching the glass on the other side of my curtains? Looking at my little boy, I wanted him to play louder. I needed him to. Did you turn that radio up? My mother's sharp voice called from the other room. No. Don't lie to me. Turn it down or I'll be over to turn it off. Okay, I replied, my hand reaching out from under the covers to the radio's plastic dial. The thought of Mother's pale face and pinched eyebrows, her slippers slapping across the hallway floor, the blue housecoat melting into the shadows, a pitiless fit of annoyance bursting into my room and leaving me in the blackest silence, was too much. I had to comply, even if I didn't turn the volume up in the first place. I felt heavy and weak, not tired. I was afraid of everything. It seemed unfair that I should have to go to sleep. It was unfair that darkness was rolling over my whole world, even snuffing out the glow-in-the-dark crucifix my grandmother gave me. The artificial green body, hanging in agony, was just another shadow monster affixed to my bedroom wall. It was unfair because the truth was, I loved everything in the daylight. The whispering voices, the dark shapes, the strange faces wanted me to follow. They were like a chorus, wearing me down, stretching me out, pulling me away from the things and people I loved. With a start, I caught my eyes closing. The little boy was playing his flute, and then he took it from his mouth. I saw the red painted lips move as the radio hissed. I wanted to look at the window or the door jamb. I needed to shock myself back to my normal terrors, but my head was so heavy upon the pillow and dread filled my heart. I could only stare at the little boy through my eyelashes, and his voice was my voice, and my voice was singing a lullaby. There's something no one's told you, but nonetheless you know. There's a sadness in a lullaby, a melody for letting go. Letting go of sunshine, mommy and daddy too. Letting go of childhood, letting go of you. There's a sadness in a lullaby, something not quite right. It says goodbye to daytime and beckons forth the night. There's something no one's told you, but nonetheless you knew. There's a sadness in a lullaby, a little tinge of blue. So go to sleep now, little one. Go to sleep, put out the light. For when this sweet tune ends, you'll melt into the night. I think I've lived that story every night, always and forever. And for those interested, I will post pictures of that actual lamp, the lamp that inspired that story, in the notes section of my Substack webpage at atomicvoodoolounge.com. Coming soon from Heavy Sixer Productions, New Stanton, a novel by Maxwell Vagus. Mr. Harold Dean, a shady alcoholic, just woke up with one hell of a hangover at the Starlight Inn, New Stanton's dingy motel. The only problem is, New Stanton doesn't exist. Join Mr. Dean on this postmodern night journey through buried memories, liminal spaces, and treachery as he searches for his sole means of escape, a blue 1964 Chevy Malibu. Will he be able to find his car before the evil Dr. Freytag does? Can Mr. Dean trust a host of bizarre characters to help him solve the mysteries of his own dysfunction and accept that New Stanton is exactly where he needs to be? The answer to these questions and many more lie scattered across New Stanton, a town that sits on the edge of a dried-up prehistoric sea, a town that exists inside and down. That brings us to the close of tonight's Atomic Voodoo Lounge Podcast. Maxwell Vagus here, and I want to thank Kimberly M. for being a paid Substack subscriber. Looks like I'm working for Kimberly now. Thank you to our first ever guest, best-selling author, ROB HART. Make sure to visit houseoftabu.com and Tabu Recordings. Remember, Tabu is spelled T-A-B-U. And check out the music of Test Subject 17 and Kitten and the Tonics. We will be featuring more Tabu recordings in future episodes. Our current schedule is one episode every other week, or about twice a month for the time being. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on Substack and spread the good word. And if you're interested in contributing music or written work or being a sponsor, drop me a line and we can discuss the specifics. And don't forget, our 6-word noir challenge is open to Substack subscribers. Check out the Atomic Voodoo Lounge on Substack and subscribe. You can find out more about Heavy Sixer Productions and Maxwell Vagus at HeavySixerProductions.com or maxwellvagus.com. And remember, Vegas is spelled V-A-G-U-S. You can also find me in the Atomic Voodoo Lounge on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All words and music composed, read, and or performed by Maxwell Vagus unless otherwise stated. All text, music, and performances copyright Heavy Sixer Productions, LLC, 2025. Some sound effects used under Creative Commons license. No AI training. Please keep your AI bots away. Thank you and good night.